What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here today. It is Monday, November 14th, 2016, start of a brand new week. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443. Mike is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And let me just do something here real quick. Now, do you remember when the Democrats were making this real big deal about how Donald Trump should accept the results of the election graciously and respect democracy? Do you remember when that was all going down? And all of a sudden, it's a double standard. Because here we have Donald Trump won the election by the rules that everybody agreed to play by. It's an electoral college election, not a popular vote. If it had been a popular vote, Trump would have changed his campaign, and he probably still would have run, especially when you subtract out all the millions of illegal immigrant votes that went to Hillary Clinton, all the dead votes who went to Hillary Clinton, all the people who voted multiple times on fraudulently manufactured registrations, and all those computer votes where people thought they were voting for Donald Trump and went over to Hillary Clinton. And they're out there rioting and protesting and whoa. Now, kind of something interesting. Over the weekend, Michigan finally officially ended the election and declared Donald Trump the winner of Michigan's electoral votes. Going to the presidential election results pages of all the corporate media, they haven't updated that yet, which kind of makes you wonder what else are they hiding there, because we're starting to hear from sources that Donald Trump did in fact win the popular vote as well as the electoral college vote, and the corporate media is trying to hide it so that they can give fuel to all these George Soros bought and paid for riots and protests, and we're going to undo the will of the people because we know what's best for the country, at least what's best for the narcocracy that's out there. But we're looking at apparently something like close to 1 million votes, popular votes, lead for Donald Trump, and that's before we subtract the millions of dead illegal immigrant and computer votes for Hillary Clinton. So, again, the fact that the corporate media hasn't even put Michigan up there yet, as of the last time I checked, which was about half an hour ago. What else are they hiding? Now, do you remember during this whole campaign when social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and everybody were censoring and deleting posts about Hillary Clinton's criminality because it was declared voter suppression or hate speech or the rest of it? But we have these two themes coming out of the so-called tolerant liberals, assassinate Trump and rape Melania, that are just trending all across social media. And by the way, to call for the assassination of the president-elect is a Class D felony. He's now basically legally protected. This idea of people coming on out and saying rape Melania, I think we can safely say that the liberals have truly come out of the closet at last, and America gets to see them for exactly what they are. Now, according to votefraud.org, which is a nonpartisan election monitoring website, they're like blackboxvoting.org, they have done an analysis of a database of 180 million voter registrations. And on the basis of their analysis, they have now concluded that 3 million illegal immigrants cast votes in this election, overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton. These votes are not supposed to count. These votes are not supposed to count at all. And by the way, the tantrum throwers are attacking my server as we speak. So they're still out there saying, how dare you not give us what we want? We're supposed to be winning here. We were told we would win. Well, you know, real world, you don't always get what you want. Now, I noticed this story. This came out of mysuncoast.com. Hundreds flood streets of downtown Sarasota to protest President-elect Donald Trump. And I noticed the first thing is how all the photos are very narrow angle. which is the first thing they do when they don't really have the crowd there they're trying to claim. And frankly, looking at the photos, I think dozens would have been a more accurate descriptor of the people in downtown Sarasota. Now, over in Portland, and let me preface this by saying that Portland went Hillary. They voted for Hillary. It's not someplace that you would want to have a protest against Donald Trump because Portland didn't go for Donald Trump. But they're still protesting there, and anti-Trump rioters with baseball bats attacked a pregnant woman in a car in a city that voted for Hillary Clinton. And I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with all of this MoveOn.org, George Soros protest, but they're not putting out a very sympathetic public face. In fact, they're making the Democrats and the liberals look like sore losers and like thugs. Now, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. We're talking about the politics, the election. The crybabies are still out there. And again, what hypocrisy after all the talk from the Democrats about how President Trump should just graciously accept the results of the election and respect democracy. And now all of a sudden the liberals and the Democrats are out there in the streets, bought and paid for by George Soros, apparently, screaming, to heck with democracy, you know, to heck with the way the elections are supposed to be run. We want what we want, and you will give it to us, or we will cause all kinds of harm. Like I said, not exactly a public image that is going to get sympathy or support from the American people. Over in Washington, D.C., they got a crowd blocking the highway, making people late for work, blocking first responders from getting to where they need to be, all to protest against Donald Trump and TPP. Attention, morons. TPP is already dead. Trump won the election. Deal with it. Stop being such a bunch of whining liberal snowflakes. My goodness. By the way, deception is running rampant all across social media. Somebody put out this viral video claiming to show millions of people in the streets of Los Angeles protesting against Donald Trump. The video is actually from Venezuela. So they're out there just trying to manufacture a mass uprising that does not really exist, and that is a hallmark of the color revolutions. Everybody is writing in. They are finding all these ads in casting magazines for local theater groups, the local film and TV industry, all the backstage magazines, Craigslist all over the place, hiring protesters to protest against Donald Trump. And by the way, they're all in violation of Title 18, Section 2389. They're out there just violating all these laws. Now, a lot of people are saying that, you know, we should see indictments for Soros and his groups. Because George Soros has funded terrorist groups. That puts him in violation of the USA Patriot Act. He's out there encouraging these riots to try and overturn the election after it's over. He's in violation of Title 18, Section 610, coercion of political activity, as well as Title 18, Section 2331, use of violence to coerce political change. Why is this guy not in prison right now? That's what I would like to know. Another embarrassment caught on video over in Portland. Rioters are chanting peaceful protest, peaceful protest, peaceful protest, while they're throwing bricks at a car with a Trump bumper sticker. Not very peaceful. Something else caught on tape to their embarrassment, the buses being used to bring these agent provocateurs into these cities. I'm getting emails from people in Portland saying, we don't recognize any of these people. They don't even look like they're from Portland. They don't dress like they're from Portland. They don't have the hairstyles of people in Portland. They're clearly outsiders being brought in. So, let's go ahead and grab two phone calls. Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing? I saw a quote today from TR that may or may not be apocryphal. The quote is, to anger a conservative, lie to him. To anger a liberal, tell him the truth.
Boy, that
actually
does seem to be right here, Mimi, because I'm getting all these emails from people I thought were my friends who are absolutely just caught up in Hillary fandom and Hillary worship. How could you not worship my God here? And you try and you put the stuff out there about all the FBI invaders. Oh no, that's just lies made by Satan to take down our goddess Hillary. Right. And she really did run her campaign as a personality cult, and we know what happens to personality cults. And if you don't remember what happens to personality cults, think Jonestown.
Exactly. I mean, it speaks to what's been going on in the current political environment with these liberals, the way they react to facts. They just want to avoid it. Or they feel that, like you said, it's not important for them to know. So they just ignore it. But, Mike, it's funny. These journalists, these so-called journalists from the corporate media, they've been asleep for 8 years. And I'm sure they're going to awake from their slumber now that Trump's going to take office. And that adversarial relationship that is normal will once again become the norm. Whereas
it's already started.
It's been soft questions.
It's already started. I mean, Trump's not even in office, and already they're excoriating. This is the worst president we've ever had. He's not even president yet. And by the way, it isn't 8 years. The corporate media has been asleep all the way back to the 1980s because the corporate media is owned by people who are, like the Clintons and the Bushes, tangled up with that whole CIA, narcocracy, drug money corruption.
No, I stand corrected. You're right. Also, Mike, I think Trump should, now that the Sheriff Joe Arpaio is available, I think he should be appointed as head of border control or INS. They should give him
I love it.
That would really piss off.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We've already got some mayors, like Mayor de Blasio, is saying he will ignore any laws from Donald Trump about sanctuary cities and illegal immigrants. And by the way, if you map out on a community by community or precinct by precinct basis this last election, Hillary's strongest support came from these sanctuary city areas where the illegal immigrants were being allowed to vote. That was her constituency, the criminal class. And they're certainly proving it now with all this rioting.
Yeah. I would love to know what the actual vote tally was, because I don't buy the popular vote that we're being fed.
I don't either. We're never going to know.
The real numbers.
It's just like Florida in 2000. We're never going to know what the real numbers were because there was so much fraud and so much effort to hide it. And very clearly, Hillary and her people thought they were going to succeed in stealing this election. Apparently, they were all getting high on champagne before the final numbers came on in. Boy, talk about a nasty hangover the next morning.
Yeah. But, Mike, I'll just say this, and then I'll let you get back to the show. I don't know what they're teaching our elementary school kids. I mean, that's when it starts, not in college. I saw a video from a school in New York where they were singing "We Shall Overcome" after the election. And these were, 7 or 8 year old kids. And the woman in the center, she had a guitar and she was playing the song. She said, "No, we shall overcome today." And I'm thinking, wow, this is frightening. It's bizarre. And if they're indoctrinating these kids at such an early age, I don't think the country has a future.
Well, I would agree with you because the reason the public schools are indoctrinating the children is in the hope the children will then indoctrinate their parents. That was why all during this last year, all the public school teachers were telling all their kids, if Trump is elected, you're all going to be sent back to Mexico and terrible things are going to happen. And now that Trump won, of course, they're dealing with all these precious little kiddies that they brainwashed are having these traumatic reactions because they actually believed their teachers. And they really think all of these horrible things are going to start happening. And they're in an absolute panic right now.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, just last thing. Ashton Carter, no surprise, he told a bold-faced lie on CBS Morning News. I don't watch the program. I just had read about it. He told Laura O'Donnell, "Oh, Russia promised to get rid of Assad." she didn't even hold him. She didn't even hold him accountable to it. She said, Russia is, and he said they're doing the opposite. They're propping him up before they promised to help us get him out of power. And then she just replied and said, they're supporting Assad? What it's come to.
It really is. Now, I'll share a little insight with you. Some years ago, I got hired to teach computer animation and visual effects at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I had a lot of fun, great kids. I really enjoyed that time in my life. But right next to where I had my classroom in the Academy for Creative Media, they had the classrooms where they were teaching people on how to enter the careers in TV journalism, and those classes were mostly about how to do your makeup and your hair and how to read teleprompters. They weren't teaching these kids to be analysts. They weren't teaching them to question and find out for themselves. They were basically teaching them to simply read to the public what was being shown to them and be very convincing about it. That's all that class was.
Well, we need to push Sheriff Arpaio on the incoming Trump administration.
Trump might do it. Trump might do it. Trump just appointed Nigel Farage to be the U.S. ambassador to the European Union. And, oh, boy, is that ruffling some feathers on the other side of the pond, as it were.
And I like the Bannon appointment. You know, people are saying now that the Praebus was just basically a token appointment. He'll have really no input at all. Bannon will have most of the input, in the Oval Office when it comes to advising Trump.
Yeah, Bannon will have the pull in terms of policy, but Priebus, that chief of staff is a very, very powerful position, and Priebus is going to decide who does and does not get to see the president, and I am very surprised that Trump went with that, given how Priebus was openly trying to sabotage Trump. I don't know where that deal came from, or if it's just another one of these rumors that's being put on out there. I don't agree with that one tiny bit. But again, Trump is the president, and he gets to call these shots here right now. And let's let him get into office and get those first 100 days before we start ripping him apart. But I'll tell you one thing right now. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. It would be nowhere near as bad as Hillary. Because Donald Trump on his worst days is still far better than Hillary on her best days, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree, totally. I agree. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I absolutely agree with the Sheriff Joe sentiment, and also it's not that the corporate media is reporting. The corporate media pushes, and they're an arm of the government. I mean, if WikiLeaks has shown us anything, the corporate media is simply an arm of the governmental regime in power, basically. They are. I mean, they tend to have longer-term alliances with either of the two political establishments. But this time, this election made it really obvious to Americans that's what's going on, and we're starting to see the corporate media try and go through the motions of an act of contrition to say, we're sorry, we'll do better, which is absolutely meaningless. They're going to go back to doing exactly what they've always done, because that's what they're paid to do. Sell you policies, sell you candidates, sell you wars, and they're not going to stop doing that, because then they'd have to learn how to live without those $1 million paychecks. Yeah, Mike, I was wondering why the Soros-funded, and by the way, obviously this serves both Hillary and Obama, these demonstrations and riots, this violence, and why they allow it to happen, why they really haven't forcefully come out and say, do not do any more of this violence in my name, I implore you to stop, or whatever. But I think, in my opinion, Mike, it's to delegitimize Trump and make it difficult for him to prosecute Hillary, which would then, of course, lead to Obama maybe even going to jail, for all we know.
Well, first of all, these Soros-funded protests are not actually working to either Hillary or Obama's advantage, because they're sending the message across the country that, yes, we were right to reject the liberal agenda, looking at the way they're behaving right now. Second, Congress is continuing to move forward on the Hillary investigations, independent of anything Trump is going to do. So the riots aren't going to change that. And everybody who's taking part in these riots, everybody who accepted money to take part in these riots, they're looking at felony Title 18 violations. We may actually have a legitimate use for those FEMA camps before this is all over.
Can I hang on?
Yeah, you can hang on. We'll bring you back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, we were talking about the violence and the demonstrations and how Soros backed and all that, but the other theory that I have for why these are going on, why they're not being stopped, is they could be doing exactly the same thing, Mike, I think, that they did in the Ukraine. You fund all these people, get them on the street, shoot at one side, then shoot at the other. They're all once they're at each other's throat, and martial law comes down.
Well,
so
a lot of people are very concerned about it, and it's a legitimate concern. But there's a major difference, and that is that when they do one of these color revolutions in the Middle East or in Ukraine, the vast majority of the people in those countries really don't understand what's been going on around them. That doesn't apply to the American people. And not all of these color revolutions work. In fact, most have actually been abject, complete failures. And the closeness of this color revolution to the election basically underscores the fact that this is an attempt by Hillary and her supporters. If they couldn't steal the election, they're just going to steal the whole gosh darn country. And most Americans are picking up on that. So they could try it, and they should be sent to jail for trying it because they're talking about armed violence against the American people. And an elected leader. And Soros, I think, he's overdue for the Gray Bar Hilton, as far as I'm concerned. I understand there's a warrant out for him inside Russia.
Amen to that. You ran an article today, I believe was there yesterday. It was Orwell. It was a reposting of the Fast and Furious, proven that the government cut a deal with Sinaloa.
Yeah, that's up on the page today. Yeah, I was going to talk about that later in the show.
I want to make a point. Remember when El Chapo threatened to kill Trump?
Yes.
And then he escaped from jail by going through a 180-foot tunnel or something that had to have been industrial made or something. But so this could be he would be a real prime candidate, or at least a fall guy to take Trump out.
Yeah, I mean, and if they can't get this color revolution thing going, if they can't bribe the Electoral College, Donald Trump has to realize that assassination is a very high probability. He's going into office with as many elements of the establishment opposed to him as John F. Kennedy did. I certainly don't envy him the job, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere near around him when the bullets start flying. But, yeah, it is a real possibility. Because remember, we're dealing with an establishment that are steeped in drug money corruption. They are criminals. And there is nothing they will not do to hang on to power, including burning down the entire nation, which is what they're on the verge of doing with all these riots right now.
And Mike, the media has been, looking the other way purposely on all these Hillary crimes and Obama crimes. I mean, for years.
Yeah, they have, and now they're trying to say, well, we didn't fully appreciate the feelings of the American people. No, you sold your souls to the political establishment. That's what the corporate media did. They sold their souls, and they're not going to get the goodies back that the demons promised them. And now they're moaning and groaning and crying and basically seeing the end of their very well-paying jobs and their luxurious lifestyles, and too gosh darn bad, I have no sympathy for them. They did it to themselves.
They sure did. Mike, thanks for me, man. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We got another caller waiting. I'm going to wait till after the commercial break. So hang on the line there, John. More stories coming out. I mean, these are all over the country. They can't hide it. Anti-Trump protesters are now admitting on camera interviews, yeah, they're showing up because they answered an ad in Craigslist and they're being paid to be there. There was a video came out on Friday where somebody went up and said, "Why are you protesting Donald Trump?" "I don't know. I'm just here because, I don't know." And now they're saying, yeah, I'm here because I got hired. I'm being paid to be here. Now, this leads to a real important question here. Is George Soros and his minions committing an act of treason here? Because we have a democratically elected president getting ready to go into office. We've got the opponent. Remember that old concept, peaceful transition of power, doesn't seem to apply anymore. And Soros is aiding this enemy of our democratically elected president during this transition. He really ought to be in jail. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Obama is holding a news conference where he's pushing this idea that the U.S. has a long tradition that new presidents will carry forward agreements made by the previous president. Actually, there is no such tradition. But Obama is out there trying to counter the fact that Donald Trump has already said no more money for these terrorists in Syria. And he's going to work with Putin and Assad to settle things down in Syria. And Obama's out there, no, I made a promise to supply ISIS with weapons. You'll make me look bad if you go back on that promise. Or some such nonsense. And I'm looking at all the social media, and already we're seeing the liberals are out there responding to the revelations about all these dead voters and illegal immigrant voters, saying that, to even suggest that our elections are not honest, what a wacky conspiracy theory, and, no, there were no dead voters, and illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote. Well, maybe, but they're not allowed to vote now. And that is the weakest link in this whole liberal thought process. Donald Trump won the election by the rules everybody agreed to play by going in. And the liberals, the Democrats, the crybabies didn't get the result they thought they were going to get. And so now they want to change the rules after it's all over. Well, we should be counting the illegal immigrants, which should be a popular vote. Well, if you want that to be the case in the future, go ahead and work toward that. But once the game is over and you've lost, you don't get to tell the dealer, really, it should be 22 instead of 21 in blackjack. All right, we're going to take John in Barbados. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael, yes. I'm looking at this scene in America, this violence, and the threat of violence to coerce or force political change. That's the very definition of terrorism.
It's also a violation of the USA Patriot Act and Title 18.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't use that, Michael. I think the military is overwhelmingly on Mr. Trump's side. And I would institute all the provisions of the NDAA that Obama introduced. But I would use that. I would arrest these people.
I wouldn't. And I'll tell you what. I wouldn't. I would leave it in the hands of the civilian police departments and just tell them, go and deal with these people as the criminals that they are. Because if Donald Trump activates the military above the level of the National Guard, I could see sending in the National Guard on some of this stuff. But, in theory, these riots should be over and done with by the time Trump takes office. It's not Trump's call to make now. It is Obama's, and he's doing nothing about it. In fact, he's up there on TV in his press conference right now saying that Donald Trump shouldn't endanger the status of the Dreamers. Obama is literally up there begging and pleading, groveling on his knees to President-elect Trump, please don't change any of our liberal policies. Don't go along with it. Don't keep your campaign promises here. Just go do what we want you to do here because we're right and all those deplorables are wrong. And it really didn't work out very well. But you can just see where Obama is realizing not only is his legacy heading into the shredder with Obamacare, but the entire liberal agenda, the globalist agenda that they've been working on for decades is about to come crashing down, and it's centered on Donald Trump. They're already talking about the Trump effect sweeping across Europe. They're starting to elect presidents there who want to pivot to Russia and away from this Western system. And I'll make one more observation here. I've been talking a long time about my concern that the U.S. government would collapse the way the former Soviet Union did. With Trump as president and a Congress who will work with him and an American people who will stand shoulder to shoulder with President Trump, we could, in theory, turn this around and head back to being a true republic with a democratically elected government without having to go through a major social upheaval. But if Soros and Hillary and all those people keep going with these protests and trigger a crisis, then I could see a Soviet Union-style collapse in Washington, D.C. And maybe that might not be a bad thing either, as long as we get Donald Trump to say, all right, you get to help us build a new government.
Well, can I disagree with you on the NDAA? Because
be free. Yes.
On the NDAA, if you disappear these people, they get no access to lawyers, no access at all. They're disappeared. That means there won't be any of this to and fro legally on the media. George Soros will
I do disagree.
Pick up 1 in 10 of those protesters and make sure you photograph them at Gitmo in their orange jumpsuits, and how quickly will the rest of these protesters disappear off the streets?
John, okay, I can understand making an example of some of the protesters so that the rest realize that $15 an hour is not worth risking jail time. I do disagree with you about NDAA, because we dare not sink down to the level of the regime we are just now trying to get out of our capital city. We have to be better than that. We have to play by the rules. We have to play by the Bill of Rights, because Donald Trump's supporters put him in that White House in order to preserve and protect that Constitution. And when NDAA came on out, we were all appalled at what it portended, the sheer unconstitutionality of it. We dare not use it now, or we lose our moral high ground in this. And I'm sorry, I would like to see the authorities come on down with these paid protesters, because they're committing acts of violence. They're committing felony assault, especially on that pregnant woman. They're committing property damage. They're in violation of multiple sections of Title 18. They should be arrested and thrown in jail, but let's do it by the system that is founded on our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And we have to prosecute the ringleaders, I agree. But we also have to be just as diligent that we go easy on those who just showed up for the money. They're the useful idiots. There's not much to be served, by bashing them around. And once you get
one more point.
Okay.
Michael.
All right.
Right. I followed your advice and was watching Westworld.
Yes.
And I know you're going to tell me it's because of all the cybernetics and computers. But I'm going to send you an application form so you can join the Dirty Old Man's Club.
Okay. Goodness knows, I think
those gorgeous creatures.
I've got one. I'm obviously qualified. I'm sure I meet the age limit. I don't know what other requirements there are to be in the Dirty Old Man's Club, but I'm sure I meet the age requirement and probably the height requirement as well. All right, John, listen, we're going to let you go here. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to close the phone lines because I have got a bunch of stuff I need to talk about. The Tantrum Squad is still pounding on my server, which tells us that, no, Hillary's people are not giving up yet. They still think they can steal this nation back from we, the American people. And that's what it is, stealing. They tried to steal the election. They failed. Now they're going to try and steal the entire country. And I think they're in for a very rough disappointment if they succeed in angering the entire American population to be going out in those streets. They're going to find out they're outnumbered, they're outgunned, they're outmatched. I don't want to see that in the streets of America. But it does seem to be the way that Hillary Clinton and George Soros is pushing this whole situation. All righty, then getting on back here. And by the way, speaking of Soros, over at 12160, they've got an article. The first thing Donald Trump should do is arrest George Soros. He has provably committed all kinds of violations of the USA Patriot Act and Title 18. He's committed treason by giving aid and comfort to America's enemies in other countries. Nobody should be above the law, not even a George Soros. Now, Russia, according to this story in therealstrategy.com, has declared George Soros a wanted man in their country, citing him and his organizations as a threat to Russian national security, just as Soros is proving himself a threat to national security here in the United States of America. Now, last year, Russia banned all Soros non-governmental organizations from operating in Russia because they caught them trying to basically fund riots and kick up dissent to have a color revolution in Russia and bring Putin down, and Putin is not the kiss and make up, forgive and forget kind of person. And now Soros is trying to do that here, and we should not let him get away with that. Now, Putin has already contacted Donald Trump and said, yes, we will cooperate, we will calm things down, we'll pull back from this insanity of war. I had made the speculation that China would require a little more schmoozing on that. I was wrong. China's president has called Donald Trump and said cooperation is our only choice in moving forward. So for those who wanted World War III, who had invested their money in the bombs and the bullets and all the rest of it, their agenda is in serious, serious trouble. Swedish leaders are calling for steadfast U.S. relations after Donald Trump's victory. This is coming out of Sweden's Social Democrat Prime Minister Stefan Löfven and the Minister for Foreign Affairs Margot Wallström. And I notice all of a sudden Sweden is now starting to have polite discussions with Julian Assange's defense. For 6 years, Sweden has refused to allow Assange to present a defense to the sexual allegations against him. Now all of a sudden they're saying, yeah, we're willing to look at your side of the argument here. Now, everybody is still analyzing the victory. A lot of people are still out there casting blame. Oh, it was all the fault of FBI Director Comey. That's the latest out of the Hillary campaign. It's all Director Comey's fault and that FBI investigation. No, it isn't, because if Hillary and her people had been playing by all the rules and regulations, there never would have been an FBI investigation to begin with. They're just unhappy they got caught in their skullduggery. And is typical of liberals, they can't accept blame for their own wrongdoing. They have to find somebody else. Story coming out of RINF.com. Clinton lost because of working class revolt against neoliberalism. That is very much true. Clinton lost because of the public awareness of her past crimes and corruptions. See, Hillary ran her campaign as if she were a lawyer. You can't prove I did any of these things. Therefore, you should not consider them. Well, in America, politics is perception. When you have a lifetime of corruption and very clearly avoiding the consequences for your actions, that becomes your public face, and that's what people voted on. Another story coming out of Russia today. Trump won because Clinton and her supporters refused to live in the real world. That is certainly true. They're caught up in this complete fantasy, where any time anybody says anything critical about Hillary Clinton, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. Oh, Vince Foster really did commit suicide, and you're all a bunch of wacko tinfoil hat kooks for thinking that. It's like this debate I had with this liberal a couple of weeks ago. They're arrogant in their ignorance. They're not intellectual elites. Yes, they went to college to get a degree in indigenous women's interpretive dance or something like that. That doesn't make them an intellectual. Makes them a good dancer, maybe. But they're very narrow-minded. They've got this worldview that they cherish, and anything that is a threat to that worldview is discarded. And they are arrogant in their ignorance. They literally go around with this attitude that if they don't know something, it's not worth knowing, therefore they should not trouble their beautiful little mind with all these inconvenient little details. And they are living in a fantasy world, especially with this idea that they're going to overturn the election of the United States of America by rioting in the streets. Now, everyone is still continuing to poke fun at all those celebrities who came on out and said, I will leave the country if Trump is elected. And most of us were saying, good, go. You're a bunch of has-beens anyway. Get out of here. Trump is now offering his plane. So all these famous Hollywood people can go and leave. And Alan Jones, who's the CEO of the Tennessee-based Jones Airways, is now offering free one-way flights to Canada for all these Hollywood celebrities who promised to leave the country if Donald Trump won the presidency. And by the way, to any of those celebrities, if you are leaving and you're leaving your car behind, I need it. So thank you all very much. Now then, over at Natural News, they have a piece which I think is tongue-in-cheek, but it might actually be right on. And they're saying about why these precious college snowflakes are going to eliminate themselves from the human gene pool at the next natural selection event. And basically, they're saying they're not able to deal with reality. They're not able to deal with the fact that the real world and real life can be extraordinarily hostile. These people are absolutely convinced that reality can be subordinated to political ideology, and they're running around doing their primal screaming and crying and whatever all else, and it's not going to change the real world. And when any of these people get out in the real world after college and they go up against real competition, they're not going to be prepared to deal with it. They'll be fodder for politicians to say, oh, yes, we must have a law that says you cannot discriminate against people who have degrees in indigenous women's interpretive dance just because the job requirement requires a degree in engineering and other such nonsense. Now, on Sundays, Meet the Press on NBC, Representative Keith Ellison, who is now looking at replacing Donna Brazile as the DNC chair, came on out and said Trump won because he was able to throw hate and poison on Hillary Clinton. They're still grasping this fantasy world they have of Hillary Clinton as this sweet and innocent princess of light. And she wasn't. And I don't think Ellison is going to be a very good head of the DNC, because anybody in an administrative position has to be ready to look at the real cause of failures if you're not going to repeat them. When the building collapses, you have to look. Where did it fail? And we've got to replace that. If the building collapses and you say, oh, it collapsed because we had the wrong flag on the roof, you're going to have more collapses down the road. There is a big problem of denial within the entire Democratic liberal establishment. They don't want to own up to the fact that Americans have gotten very tired of the agenda. They don't want to own up to the fact that Americans understand the intense amount of corruption there is in both established political parties. They don't want to own up to their own failures. It always has to be somebody else's fault. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with more news. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And as I mentioned before, the good news is Congress vows to continue the Hillary Clinton investigations. Now, a lot of people are making a big deal over Donald Trump's comments post-election about how, you know, no hard feelings, the Clintons are good people, and they're trying to interpret it that Donald Trump is going to break his campaign promise to prosecute Hillary Clinton. And I think you misread what Trump was saying. Trump is being gracious in his victory. To the same extent, the Democrats are being ungracious in their defeat, I might add. And what he's trying to say is he's not going to go after Hillary Clinton for revenge or vindictiveness, but obviously if she's committed crimes, she ought to go to jail. And certainly Hillary has a long, long history of things she's done that are prosecutable. The corruption, the possible espionage involving that email server, we should not let that go away, especially if Soros is seriously planning on trying to hijack the Electoral College and impose Hillary on us anyway. So, anyway, let's see. But, you know, obviously Hillary is willing to literally burn down our entire country with riots to save her own sorry rear end from her crimes. House Oversight Committee Chair Hillary Clinton probe will absolutely continue. What I want to find out is, first of all, I want a confirmation that Trey Gowdy is going to be Trump's Attorney General. Oh, boy, would that be a cause for celebration. And I want to know just who Trump is going to pick to head the FBI, because that will tell us just how much is really going to be getting done. Now, interestingly enough, there was a story that came out of Bloomberg pushing this idea why Obama should pardon Hillary Clinton, and basically selling this idea. Obama shouldn't hesitate to pardon her, even if she says she doesn't want him to. Well, Bloomberg is fully on board with Hillary. First of all, at this point, a pardon is as good a confession in the eyes of the public. A pardon says crimes have been committed and I, President Obama, am trying to keep them covered up. That'll be a dark stain on Obama's historical legacy. But Bloomberg is making a critical mistake saying that Obama should pardon Hillary even if she says she doesn't want him to, because under the rules, the president cannot issue a pardon until one has been applied for. So Hillary would have to say, please pardon me, and Obama would say yes or no. But so far she hasn't asked, because Hillary understands if she asks for a pardon, it's basically a signal to the entire American public, yes, I committed crimes, I need to keep them covered up. Now, a lot of people are talking about Donald Trump. Is he going to build the wall, or is it just going to be a glorified fence? I still think it would be cheaper to put crocodiles in the Rio Grande. More about this when we come back from station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about Trump's wall. And Trump is already saying that in some areas a fence might be sufficient. And yes, it might be. But again, I think it would be cheaper just to put crocodiles in the Rio Grande. A couple of chomps, and that will make the problem go away. And remember, President Eisenhower absolutely shut down the illegal immigrant problem with Operation Wetback with only 10% of the current INS ICE staff to do it with, and he didn't build a wall. He just went down there with a zero-tolerance policy. You get caught on our side of the border without proper identification, you get tossed back over. It's that simple. So they're talking about, is it a real wall? Is it just a fence? Might not even be needed, because what we're hearing now from all the illegal immigrants are saying, well, we're not even going to try and cross the border anymore, because it's very obvious that, the goodies won't be here. And that is going to be one of the most effective tools to stop this refugee illegal immigrant problem, and that is to cut off all the social services. Stop giving them free stuff to lure them here. And I'm talking about the illegal immigrants and the refugees. I'm not talking about those who have gotten a green card, those who are playing by the rules, those who are becoming citizens, following the legal procedure. Fine. Welcome to this country, and I hope we're not too much of a disappointment to you. But the ones who just walked across the border, stop giving them stuff. Just common sense. If they're not going to get free education, free housing, free food, free whatever coming up here, they're going to stop coming here. It's just common sense. And that's another aspect that liberalism seems to not have in abundance, is common sense. Now, let's see. A listener apparently wants an update on the Greenbrier thing. Okay, for those who don't remember, the Greenbrier is this amazing hotel near Washington, D.C. And during most of the Cold War, it was also a secret underground command bunker where the Congress would be taken for protection if a nuclear war came about. Now, when the Soviet Union collapsed and we all went to being friends with Russia, Greenbrier was decommissioned and actually has been a tourist attraction, where people will go to the Greenbrier and they get to tour the bunker and look at all this Cold War nonsense. Well, after the U.S. government decided to go back to having Cold War version 2.0, the Golden Cut, the Greenbrier was apparently reactivated, resupplied, and it's one of many of these underground command posts that were built in case somebody made a miscalculation in World War III and the mushroom clouds did start blooming all over the place. So my last understanding of the Greenbrier and its bunker is that it is back on operational status. Same with Mount Weather. I understand they're starting to go back in and refurbish Cheyenne Mountain. If you look at it on Google Earth, that original front entrance is still garbaged up. But if you head on over west a little bit, you'll find the southern, the other entrance, the back door, and that's in good repair, and you can see a lot of vehicles around that. So that's where the bunker mentality. But again, with Trump in the White House and China saying, let's cooperate, Russia saying, let's befriend, all of that stuff may get shut down again and go back to being tourist attractions. So that's where we are on that. Now then, NATO is in an absolute sheer panic over the Trump victory because Donald Trump is putting out this idea that if America comes to the defense aid of any nation anywhere, whether it's in NATO or Israel, that nation should pay for it. And NATO is in a panic because right now, even though it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and most of its members are in Europe, the United States government, meaning you, the American taxpayer, have been paying for almost 3/4 of all of NATO's operations. And that's going to back off. Trump will fund NATO in proportion to America's participation in it, but they're going to expect all these other countries to pay their own way now. And that sounds like common sense to me as well. Now, the European Union is having an emergency meeting out of concern of the Trump effect continuing to spread all across Europe and lead more and more countries to vote out their entrenched globalists and go with populist candidates because, populism is bad in the eyes of the globalists and the tyrants. You should never have populism. Just because the people want something, that's not a reason to go with a particular candidate here. But the French foreign minister has decided not to bother showing up to the EU's emergency talks on Donald Trump. And that's another sign that France is considering their own exit. First it was the Brexit, now they're talking Frexit, Grexit, Drexit. The whole EU is starting to unravel. And Juncker is just having kittens over that right now. We're going to take a moment to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're still talking about politics. We're talking about Trump's election victory and the ramifications for the European Union and the globalist agenda as a whole, and the reversal of this trend towards single empire-like blocks across the globe and going back to more and more small nations of people just taking care of themselves. Now, apparently over in Spain, there was a demonstration for Catalan independence in favor of it. 80,000 people showed up. Italy is looking at a referendum to break free from the EU that is looking like it will pass. And finally, of course, the important news, Donald Trump is saying there will be no more U.S. support for terrorists operating in either Iraq or Syria. They're going to have to just do it on their own, and we're already hearing where some of these groups of U.S.-backed rebels and terrorists are heading for the border or accepting Assad's amnesty offers. And Trump is saying he's going to work with Assad and with Putin to basically clear all of these rebels out and settle it down and put Syria back under the control of the Syrian government and the Syrian people. Now, the U.S.-sponsored rebels, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, are now using chemical weapons against the Syrian army. Remember when the Obama and Kerry were out there saying, it's Assad, he's using sarin gas on his own Alawite supporters. That doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? It doesn't matter. Just believe us when we tell you that Assad had sarin and Saddam had nuclear weapons. You just have to believe. Don't think, don't question, don't analyze, just believe. You're of no use to us if you actually think for yourself. Well, too bad. We're thinking the damage is done. Mea maxima culpa. So the latest word we are now getting is Russia is preparing their heavy bombers, and they have sent a message into Aleppo that the U.S.-backed terrorist groups have got just 24 hours to lay down their arms and either leave the country or accept Assad's amnesty program, which Assad has very generously said, put your guns down, swear your allegiance to Syria and the Syrian people and the Syrian government, and you can go home. And without all of that U.S. support being paid for by you, the American taxpayer, things are going to quiet down. And not just in Syria. Over in Yemen, we have this other problem where the Saudis are using these U.S.-supplied weapons to deliberately target civilian infrastructure. And we've seen this in Yemen. We've seen it in Libya. We've seen it in Syria, where they'll go on in and they'll bomb hospitals and schools and Doctors Without Borders and food storage facilities and oil pipelines and wells. And it's always the same thing. Oh, we're sorry. We thought we were aiming at terrorists. You know, we'll do better the next time. Really. We're not trying to kill civilians. They just happen to be standing where the bombs are falling. And even sources like the New York Times are starting to realize this is less an anti-rebel campaign and is actually a war of systematically obliterating Yemen for refusing to accept their U.S. puppet rulers. The internationally approved government is the phrase they like to use. Well, it's a government created by the U.S. to put on in, and they'll go get a rubber stamp from the United Nations. Oh, that makes it internationally approved. Well, let me turn that around. How would you feel if somebody showed up and started bombing the United States, saying that Donald Trump and his government are no longer considered legitimate in the eyes of the world, and we're going to drop bombs on you until you accept our approved government under Hillary Rodham Clinton? How would you feel about that? Because that's what's going on. And a lot of people, here's the difference. Because of the internet, because of the independent media, the people of the world understand what's been going on since the end of World War II. And they've come to understand that what they had previously thought were actual popular uprisings among their own people were just staged coups d'etats from outside. That's why Ukraine has never really settled down. The Ukrainian people never believed that Poroshenko represented a change for the better. He was installed in a coup d'etat. Right now, 84% of Ukrainians would rather have Vladimir Putin as their president than Poroshenko. In fact, Poroshenko in this poll came in 5th place with only 1%, 538 votes. Now, the new Trump-Putin alliance has sparked a diplomatic crisis because ministers in Great Britain, and for that matter all over Europe, are demanding assurances from the United States they're going to be protected from Russia. Because over the last couple of years, all of these countries, Great Britain and Europe, have been on the U.S. side provoking Russia, provoking Russia, provoking Russia. And now Donald Trump says, we're going to go back to being friends with Russia. And these European countries, after going along with this war agenda, are thinking, what's Russia going to do? Are they going to try and punish us? Are they going to retaliate against us? I mean, here, the U.S. brought us all to the edge of a nuclear war with Russia, and now they're just going to quit? What's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. Absolutely nothing. Putin won't do anything. Once they go back to being friends with the United States, they'll just say, look, we're going to drive our weapons back to the storage shed. You're going to drive your weapons back to the storage shed. We're going to open up the borders for trade and tourism. What could possibly be wrong with that? Well, obviously, the war hawks in Britain have a somewhat different idea because they've just decided to deploy batteries of high-precision, long-range missiles into Estonia amid fears that Putin is going to invade Estonia. And I can already tell you what Putin's reaction to that is going to be. Why? Why? What does Estonia have that we don't already have? Look back over the last 15 years and see who is invading other countries. It isn't Russia. And don't give me that nonsense about Russia annexing Crimea. Crimea voted to merge with Russia because they were fed up with Western-style economic domination. And it looks like the war hawks are still trying to get a hot war going with Russia before Trump can take office. Putin isn't going to respond to any provocation. Neither will China. They're going to sit there no matter what Obama does and just say, well, fog of war. You know, we'll take it up at the United Nations. We're not going to respond militarily. And Obama's going to be out there saying, I dare you to knock this chip off my shoulder. I dare you to knock that chip off my shoulder. Obama is apparently on the verge of demanding Greece close all of its ports to Russian warships. Bad Russia, bad Russia. They shouldn't be in the Mediterranean. That's our sea. We, the United States of America, own the Mediterranean. I'm sure most of the nations bordering the Mediterranean probably have a different view. But that's Obama coming on out there and saying, Greece, you can't allow Russian ships to use your port. Well, Russia and Greece have issued a joint statement basically saying that the relationship between Greece and Russia, Greece is pivoting toward Russia. They got a raw deal from the EU, and they're saying they have a friendship, and neither NATO nor the EU or Obama are going to get in the way of it. Russia has gone a long way to helping Greece recover from this economic predatory behavior from the IMF and the World Bank and the ECB and the Federal Reserve. Now, Bulgaria and Moldova just had their elections. They elected two presidents who are in favor of normalizing relations with Russia and turning away from the West. Everybody is sick and tired of this private central bank economic predation and debt slavery, and they're turning away from it. I think it's a good thing. Meanwhile, down in Israel, the Israeli ministers have okayed a draft bill that would declare it to be legal for Jews to build settlements on stolen private Palestinian land. Now, the country's attorney general is saying there are some legal flaws in this bill because you're not supposed to pass a bill that says it's okay for one party to steal from another party. So there may be a bit of a fight when it gets to the Knesset, but that's literally what the bill is saying. It's okay for Jews to steal land from Palestinians and build homes on them. Now, over at the corporate media, they're still licking their wounds, and they're starting to make the noises of repentance, forgiveness, acts of contrition. We're sorry. We realize we failed in our duty to objectively analyze what was going on. MSNBC basically came on out and said, yeah, I guess we kind of crossed the line from news reporting and propaganda. Gee, you think? Now, I want to be very clear here. The corporate media is not planning to change a thing. They just realize they got caught being propagandists, and they're trying to have a moment of contrition to convince you they're going to change their ways, and they're not going to. Because corporate media makes huge amounts of money lying to you, to sell you a policy, to sell you a candidate, to sell you GMO, to sell you vaccines, to sell you the next president. If they stop doing that, if they stop lying and propagandizing, nobody's going to pay those high prices, and they're all going to have to learn how to live without those million-dollar paychecks. Corporate media is corporate media because that's what they do. Selling things, controlling what you think. They're not going to stop doing it. They'd have to declare bankruptcy the day they did. Even the New York Times is out there admitting that, yeah, they kind of failed journalistic standards this last year, and they're basically saying, well, they're actually trying to blame Donald Trump, saying his sheer unconventionality led us and other news outlets to underestimate his support among the American voters. Well, we know otherwise from the leaked Podesta emails. The top 65 people of all the corporate media were on board the Hillary campaign. They were part of Hillary's campaign team. They sold their souls to the Hillary campaign. That's why we call them prostitutes and correspondents. And they got caught doing it. And I don't think they're going to recover from this anywhere near as rapidly as they would like to. Forgiveness is going to be a long time coming. You can work 100 years to build the trust and faith of your audience, and one clumsy lie can destroy it. Trust arrives on foot, but it departs on horseback. And it will be a long time, if ever, before anybody blindly trusts anything the corporate media has to say. And again, the numbers are showing it. The audience is shifting over to the independent media. There are thousands of outlets, just like my website, just like my radio show. Huge diversity of opinion out here so that you can look at all the different points of view and decide for yourself what makes sense. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And one of the callers earlier in the show had mentioned this story coming out of, well, it's in a couple of different places. Basically, an investigation by El Universal down in Mexico found that between the years of 2000 and 2012, and it may be continuing to this day, the U.S. government had a secret deal with Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel that allowed the cartel to smuggle billions of dollars of drugs into the United States of America, while Sinaloa provided information on rival cartels. Remember El Chapo and his miraculous escape? He's working for the U.S., for the government. The U.S. government is the biggest drug smuggler in this country. Why were they gathering information on rival cartels? The same reason that the U.S. government was spending your tax dollars to arm the Sinaloa cartel with military-style weapons through the Fast and Furious program to eliminate the competition and establish a monopoly. Because when you have a monopoly on the flow of drugs, you can raise prices. That's what's been going on. And, of course, at the same time they're giving these drug cartels military-style weapons, they're out there saying, oh, you, the American people, you have absolutely no need to have these kind of weapons. All right, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines for more phone calls, and we're going to start with Connor in Ireland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
First, I wanted to go talk about what you said about the media and how they're not going to stop what they're doing. But I'm first going to talk about what you were just saying now. Yeah, I think it's very obvious that the American government runs basically their own cartel, because it's just come out that the American government also runs possibly more than half of all pedophile sites on the internet. So, in order to entrap people, but I think they run most of the problems that are out there. They are responsible for most of it. But
well, they're the privileged class of criminals here. But remember, this whole Bush-Clinton duopoly tracks back to Operation Screwworm, which was the CIA program in the mid-'80s to manufacture untraceable military weapons and smuggle them to the Nicaraguan Contras to use against the Sandinistas. And all of this was a violation of the Boland Amendment and the Logan Act. It was being run by then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush clandestinely, was not an official U.S. government policy. And so in order to fund all of this stuff, the CIA, even back then, was smuggling cocaine into the United States of America, which they were allowed to do under a change to the rules that was actually created by Ronald Reagan's Attorney General, William French Smith. And his assistant in all of this was Ken Starr. The name will come back in a little tiny bit. Now, the northern end of this, in order to fund all of this gun running, they were smuggling cocaine back into the United States of America by the ton and selling it to our kids. And the northern end of that gun and drug running pipeline was in Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton, and everybody along the way was making huge amounts of untraceable, untaxable money. That, like the rum runners of Prohibition, they had enough money to buy and bribe their way into the highest levels of the U.S. government.
Well, so what I originally called to talk about was, you were saying, the media is not going to change. They're not going to change their whole, basically, propaganda regime, right?
Right.
But in 2012, only 40% of people polled in the U.S. trusted their media. And as of this year, the polls show, since this election, only 6% of people trust the media and believe the other 94% either they aren't sure or they outright don't believe it. I mean, do you really think that won't make a difference? Because I feel like that would at least prompt some change if people aren't believing a word you're saying. At some point, you got to, change up your game a bit. You think the media won't change at all?
Well, there's going to be some changes because obviously they're losing viewers and they're losing ad revenue, and the corporate entities and individuals who are continuing to prop it up are not going to be happy with that huge deluge of red ink on the bookkeeping. But again, the current corporate media their business is lying. I think we're going to start seeing them start to collapse and be replaced by new media companies who go back to the original model of being a watchdog on government abuse. And I think most of those new media companies are going to be coming out of the current independent media. Alex Jones, he's got a good footing in terms of building. We know that Trump is going to be starting, or Trump's son, rather, is going to be starting his own media outlet, and I would sure like to know where I could send a resume to them. All right, so, Connor, thank you very much. We're going to have to let you go and take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And over this last weekend, the Earth has been rocking and rolling. And by the way, for you astronomy people, we're in the middle of what's called a supermoon, which is a full moon when the moon is closest to the Earth in its elliptical orbit. And this is apparently the largest supermoon since 1948, and there won't be another one like it until, well, long after I'm gone. So that was worth getting up and seeing. Last night was the closest approach, but you can still see it tonight. But getting on back to the earthquakes, they had a monster 7.8 quake over in the South Island of New Zealand, and there has been a whole string of major magnitude 6+ aftershocks going up the coast. And it's even worse than the quake they had about a year ago. We're just now getting video out of there, and it's absolutely amazing. Now, for those of you who are fans of Lord of the Rings, which was filmed in New Zealand, all those spectacular mountains there, they don't just happen without a cause. New Zealand gets a lot of quakes, a lot more even than California. But apparently a lot of Earth did move. There was a peninsula that collapsed in the middle. Now it's an island, and there's some cows out on what is now the island that they're worried about. Are they going to be able to survive out there with the limited food that's available to them? But it is spectacular. And then there was another 6+ over in Argentina. And we've actually got a bit of a quake swarm going on down on the Big Island, which may signal an increase in the eruptions down there, which Kilauea has been in a state of constant eruption for close to 20 years now. And it's a big tourist attraction. There's a national park down there on the Big Island, Volcanoes National Park, and people like to go on down there because it's a quiet eruption. It's just flowing. There's not a lot of explosion going on, and if there is, they have barriers to keep you back from it. But if you are thinking of coming to Hawaii, I got to put this out there, and you go down to Volcanoes National Park, do pay attention to those little sawhorses and the ropes that they put across, because every year we lose about a dozen tourists who say, hey, it looks just as solid on the far side as the near side. I want a selfie with the lava. And they step over, and it's just a thin layer of glass, and it shatters, and they vanish in this flash of flame and smoke. And, they don't put those sawhorses and those signs up there just to justify their paychecks. These are experts. They know what's going on down there. And it's rather amazing. People come out here to Hawaii, and they're sold on this idea of an island paradise. And their normal common sense, self-defense, protective instincts get left behind. And if you're going to go see the volcanoes, you need closed-toe shoes, not sandals. You're walking on broken glass. That's what the lava is. And you got to take a lot of water with you because it's very hot and you will dehydrate. But it's worth the trip. A few years back, I took my nephew, Marek, down there and dangled him over the lava and said, see? Now then, there's also been a major quake, major for the region, in Cushing, Oklahoma, near the U.S. largest oil storage facility. This was a 5.0 magnitude quake, 50 miles northeast of Oklahoma City. Now, magnitude 5 in and of itself isn't all that big. But if you're dealing with giant oil tanks that are not built to deal with seismic events, you could have some serious problems. And that's been one of the worst aspects of this whole fracking problem in Oklahoma. Prior to fracking, Oklahoma had no real history of seismic activity. And Oklahoma doesn't have a building code, has not been following a building code for buildings and storage tanks to be resistant to horizontal land movement. And they could be shattered by a significant quake. Now then, here's a very interesting story. This is from realclimatescience.com. Record global cooling over the last 8 months. And they're going on out to the raw temperature data. There's no statistical correction or adjustment or anything else like that. Basically saying the world is cooling significantly. A lot of scientists who are not being paid by the global warming scammers are saying we are, in fact, entering into a new mini ice age, and we need to study the last mini ice age to get an idea of what we're going to be dealing with. But the global warming cultists are still not giving up. There is a UN front group that calls itself the World Meteorological Organization. It's part of the UN. It's the front PR group for the IPCC. They are there to provide pronouncements that the world is getting warmer, which the corporate media will pick up and present to you as absolute truth, never to be questioned. And the World Meteorological Organization is saying 2016 is now the hottest year on record. Never been hotter in all the years we've been taking measurements. Well, that's only if you're massaging the data, because we know in the mid-1930s was a lot hotter. But they're still pushing this. And over at Bloomberg, again, they have this article. Trump victory deals blow to the global fight against climate change. Well, first of all, when you understand that climate on Earth is decided, or rather dominated by solar energy output, which is in decline, and the changing shape of Earth's orbit, you come to understand there is no fight against climate change. It is as pointless as when Caligula had his soldiers stab the ocean with a spear because he was angry with the god Neptune. And Bloomberg is going on out there about how Trump's victory threatens the industries working to clean up global warming. Industries like, Evergreen Solar, that lost $25 million. SpectraWatt, that lost $500,000. Solyndra lost $535 million. Beacon Power lost $43 million. Nevada Geothermal lost $98 million. SunPower lost $1.2 billion. First Solar lost $1.46 billion. Babcock and Brown lost $178 million. Enerdell's subsidiary Ener1 lost $118 million. Amonix lost $5.9 million. Fisker Automotive lost $529 million. Abound Solar lost $400 million. A123 Systems lost $279 million. Willard and Kelsey Solar Group lost $700,000. Johnson Controls lost $299 million. BrightSource lost $1.6 billion. Ecotality lost $126 million. Razor Technologies $33 million. Energy Conversion Devices $13 million. Mountain Plaza lost $2 million. Olson's Crop Service and Olson's Mills Acquisition Company $10 million. Range Fuels $80 million. Thompson River Power $6 million. And on and on and on and on and on. Now, here's the point I want to make. Most of these green companies had loan guarantees and subsidies from the Obama administration to fight human-caused global warming, which means you, the American taxpayer, ultimately picked up all these losses of billions and billions and billions of dollars. And Bloomberg is out there saying that, oh my goodness, these industries are all threatened. Actually, a lot of them have already declared bankruptcy and vanished. But until someone can put a thermostat on the sun and change the Earth's orbit without knocking everything on the surface of the Earth down in the process, climate will always change. It always has. It always will. It was changing long before humans came. It'll be changing long after humans are gone. That's reality. And again, the failing of the liberal mind was this idea that reality could be subordinated to political agenda. If we say the world is warming, then by golly, it's warming, and don't you pay attention to all that snow and ice that you're seeing. Now, getting into the world of computers, we all remember the Ashley Madison embarrassment. Poor security got on in there and exposed all these names and addresses. Some of them were apparently subjected to blackmail threats. You would think it would be better than this. Well, apparently, Adult Friend Finder Network, another website to allow people to attract love mates, married or otherwise, got hacked 412 million accounts, including deleted files, deleted memberships. People who had said, I cancel my membership, their information was made public. Apparently the Penthouse website was hacked and their members made public. Now, some of you might be out there saying, well, you know, they're looking at naked women and they're engaging in questionable practices. Well, that's not your call to make. Not everybody is uptight about naked people. I remember on Westworld, they had 2 episodes ago where there was this orgy going on, and there were all these naked people in the background, and you didn't see anything. You know, there wasn't anything hardcore or anything. And everybody, oh, look at all those naked people. Well, it's supposed to be an orgy scene. What do you think's going to be there? You know, the rest of the world isn't as uptight. I got sent this picture of Angela Merkel as a young girl on a beach with 2 other women, and they're all completely naked. It's, oh, is Angela Merkel naked? Oh, really? Well, you know, in Europe, public nudity isn't a big deal. It's just they're not as hung up about it. And as far as people having affairs, well, obviously it's not something that I agree with or participate in, but there are couples who do have open relationships where they're allowed to catch a little on the side because it's fun. But here's the point, the weakness of the computer systems. And I know people are going to say we shouldn't be worried about them. They were doing naughty things and they got caught. Well, they're not the only ones. According to Kaspersky, ransomware attacks on small businesses have gone up 8 times. Just in the last year. You know, pay us or your data gets it. Where's the NSA on this? Where's the FBI on this? Where's the CIA? Is it really impossible for the NSA, which claims to be able to penetrate any computer system on Earth, that they can't find these ransomware hackers? Or is the ransomware actually another program by the U.S. government, like civil forfeiture, to pillage and loot their own people in a desperate bid to stay ahead of financial, economic, fiscal collapse? Now, Kaspersky outed the hacker collective Equation Group as being part of the NSA. So we can't rule out the fact that the NSA is itself engaged in large amounts of computer crime for whatever reasons. Edward Snowden has said the people at the NSA don't hesitate to steal and make copies of pictures you may have of your significant other in states of undress and ecstasy to add to their own personal collection. That huge data center in Utah may actually be the world's largest amateur porn collection, which is why they can't find any terrorists. Now, a caller mentioned this earlier in the show, and we're going to talk about it. The FBI ran 23 dark web child porn sites in order to gather visitor information. And apparently, last January, the FBI had run another child porn site for 13 days. Now, you have to admit, this is a little hypocritical. If you think child porn is bad, and I'm definitely in that category, then it's wrong when anybody does it. That includes the FBI. And this idea that it's okay if the government is doing it, I don't think so. I'll give you another hypocrisy that always bothers me, is all these motorcycle policemen riding around on their motorcycles, pulling cars over and writing tickets because the people in the cars aren't wearing seatbelts. There are no seatbelts on those police motorcycles. just in case you were curious. Now, Obama has apparently signed another executive order pushing the program of global vaccination, and I find this very interesting because Obama's executive orders really stop at the border. Obama cannot write an executive order that really has any effect on a foreign country. But he's out there pushing it and saying, the World Health Organization will do this. You'll go into other people's countries and you'll stick needles in them. And again, as I mentioned before with Obama and his press conference, he's literally out there begging the incoming President Trump, don't change any of the liberal agenda that we have worked so hard to put on in, because we were really expecting Hillary to carry this on forward, and Hillary lost, and now we're demanding that you just basically keep, another Obama administration in power. And Trump's not going to go along with that. Now, the problem I have with mandatory vaccinations is manifold. First of all, it's the end of medical freedom. It's the end of the freedom for you to decide for yourself what is the best possible response to any illness or threat of illness that you face. We know that vaccines are a major, major profit center for Big Pharma. They love it. They're selling medications to people who are perfectly healthy. And if they get sick after they get the vaccination, then that's another profit opportunity to sell more medication to deal with the problem. And we know there's a lot of very questionable materials in these vaccines. There have been cases where vaccines being given at taxpayer expense to women in third world countries are being discovered to actually be sterilization chemicals. Bill Gates is really on board with this. We've got to control the population of those useless eaters by sticking needles in them. And I would hope that this is also going to come to a halt under President Trump. Now, if the medical companies can come up with something that really works, provably works, they don't have to rig the trials, then we should consider buying it. But this constant resorting to government authority to force people to buy things they don't want and probably don't need, that's the imprimatur of fascism. And I think if there's one overall objective we should have in the incoming administration, it is to pull back from this rush toward fascism in our country. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing fine.
A little quick, two little quick stories I have about vaccinations. When I was 3, I was vaccinated, obviously like a lot of us were up here in Canada, and my mother was giving me a bath. This is the story she tells me. And I went into convulsions like that same night. And of course, she phoned, and she rushed me to the hospital. And the only thing that saved my life when I was 3 was I was in the bath water, which cooled my body, because obviously I had broken out into a very, very high temperature. Anyway, fast forward about 30 years, about almost 20 years ago, I went for hay fever shots. The second to the last shot, it really hurt. And, you go sit in the doctor's office immediately afterwards. And within about 3 or 4 minutes, I started having this feeling like there was something inside my body crawling around trying to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, my heart rate went up and my blood pressure, went through the roof. So, I tell the nurse, and I go back in to see the doctor. He gives me a bunch of shots of adrenaline around the puncture from the
okay.
hay fever medication, which was, basically pollen, right? The next time I went in for my final shot, he sat me down and he goes, I'm going to tell you what happened. When I injected that needle, I hit a vein. And he said, I remember kind of feeling a little bit of resistance when I put the needle in. He goes, but I'm pretty sure that I put it right into your bloodstream. And he said to me, that's how children end up with all these problems when they get vaccinated. He told me that. knowing that when I was 3, because I've had it my whole life, that's what happened to me as well.
Yeah, that would definitely be an issue
exactly
because,
how it happened.
vaccines are always supposed to be intramuscular, but if they put it into the bloodstream, then, yeah, they're going to get a concentrated dose, and that could provoke a reaction. And it's just, they're there to sell the product, and they're just very reckless in how it's being used, and they're harming people.
Yes, yes. And you know this, and yet, how often do you actually hear those facts when every time you get a needle, every single time there are risks. There are always risks, and yet you never hear the truth of why these vaccinations and every other shot goes bad that are, like you said, supposed to be intramuscular. And yet, you hit a vein and it goes into your bloodstream, breaking that blood-brain barrier, and it goes right, and all these problems happen. And yet they never, ever talk about it. I've never heard it once. No,
because the corporate media is there. They get huge amounts of money from the pharmaceutical advertisers, and that they're not going to alienate their advertisers. And that's unfortunately why the corporate media is going to stay the corporate media. They don't want to live on the kind of money that we're running What Really Happened on. So they're going to go out and continue to sell out to the highest bidder. Anyway, listen, Al, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go right to the phones here. Sherry in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Hi, Mike Rivero. Listen, I just was talking to your producer-operator.
Yes.
And I'm not online here at the house. I have a business place I go to if I want to go online. And I do things by mail a lot. So I want to make a donation by mail. You are incredible. And I have every October, I have about 3 or 4 people I give to. My charitable giving thing that makes my heart glad because they're so important to me. And I want to put you on there, but I want to do it by mail, and can you give me an address so I don't have to go online to get the address?
Well, okay. The address is rather convoluted, and if you could bear to go online once to my website, whatreallyhappened.com, underneath the green banner at the top, there's a white bar, and over at the right it says donate. And there is an address that you can use there. It goes to a postal box, and instructions as to who to make the checks out to, because it's actually going to a business that owns the What Really Happened website, and you can get all that information there, and I do appreciate it. And one more thing, we're not legally a charity. You can't deduct us from your tax.
I don't do that.
Oh, okay. All right.
But listen, Mike, you're going to have to run this whatreallyhappened.com. And then I look for a postal box. What was the part after that? Because I'm really
okay. Up at the top, there's the banner that says "What Really Happened," and today it says "Conspiracy Theory: A Truth Not Yet Forced into View." Directly under it is a menu bar with 7 items, and all the way over on the right it says "Donate." And if you click that, it'll give you a PayPal tool, but it will also give you a postal address where you can send me something by the mail. Okay?
Postal address, that's what I need to know. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go. Now then, getting on back to the news here, and thanks to everybody who donates, because in this run-up to the election, we actually turned off some of our abusive advertisers because there was a big malware problem out there. And it looks like it's not going to go away anytime soon because they still think they're going to steal this thing. We're getting a report now of more confrontations between the anti-Trump rioters and the police. Apparently, the police are trying to arrest some of the violent people, are then being surrounded by more violent protesters who are now attacking the police and trying to free the rioters already arrested. I mean, that is absolute, complete lawlessness. And again, where this is not going to work, all of these riots, all the vandalism, beating up on a pregnant woman with baseball bats, all of this stuff is not presenting a public image of the Democrats and the Hillary supporters that the American people are going to find sympathetic, and certainly they're not going to be wanting to support it. And we may have seen an eye blink from the establishment because finally Obama has come on out and made a comment about all these protests saying Americans need to reconcile themselves with a Trump presidency. And this is probably tied in with his press conference earlier where he's out there begging Trump to keep his policies moving forward. And so finally out there, now we're waiting, of course, obviously for Hillary Clinton to come on out and say, look, Trump's going to be the next president. Please stop protesting and rioting. I don't think we're going to see that for a while. Pardon me. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, the president of China has already phoned Donald Trump, says let's be friends. Cooperation is the key to the future. And at this point, the U.S.-Asia pivot plan seems to be in serious, serious trouble. And a lot of the areas that were U.S. allies are turning away, like the Philippines, although President Duterte has already indicated that once Trump is in office, the Philippines will go back to normalized relations with the United States. But all of these agendas, the confrontation with Russia, the confrontation with China, they're all falling apart. And we understand what that ultimately is really going to mean. The United States government, politicians, Wall Street, over the last 30 years, turned their backs on what really makes an economy work. Manufacturing products people want to buy, growing agricultural produce people want to buy, and instead they just wanted to be the bankers to the world, and people got sick and tired of that. Nobody wants to borrow U.S. dollars at interest for global trade and banking when they can go to the ruble and the yuan, and even their own currencies. More and more countries are signing treaties for direct cross-border conversion of their currencies without some banker getting a piece of the action. It's an old, failed model. Now, because the U.S. has turned their back on manufacturing, we don't have anything people want to buy. Even our weapon systems, which used to be considered the best in the world, no matter what they cost. Well, today, they're still just as expensive, even more expensive, and they're junk. The F-35, the F-22, the Independence-class littoral combat ships, the Freedom-class littoral combat ship, the Zumwalt has got problems. People are now saying it may be possible that the new aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, may never actually be considered combat-worthy. Be okay for sailing around, looking good, and running patrols and stuff. We can't make anything people want to buy. That is Donald Trump's biggest task. How are we going to bring the jobs back if the manufacturing has already gone to other countries? And all during the 80s and 90s, politicians were willing to just let these manufacturing go to other countries. We don't need to get our hands dirty. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. We're talking about the economic ramifications of Trump's election victory and where it meets some very bad economic policy set by preceding administrations. So we had this corporate leadership that grew up out of the MBA program designed by Harvard University at the end of World War II, pardon me, where there weren't enough managers to go around and business was booming. And so we created a generation of managers who are unconnected to the actual process of production. There was that standardized scientific business management interface, and that's all they know. They don't care what's going on the floor or the laboratory. They don't have an emotional connection to the building of a quality product. And these people with these MBAs grew up to be our corporate leadership today. And they were happy to ship our manufacturing to other countries. Because the CEOs are still making their money off the sales. It's just the American people who used to work in those factories don't have jobs anymore. And then they're wondering why retail is in such a sorry state here in this country. It's not because there aren't products and they aren't inexpensive. It's because the American workers don't have money to spend. Wasn't really well thought out in that case. So Donald Trump wants to bring the jobs back. He wants to make America great. I wish it was as easy as all that. I wish Donald Trump could wave the elder wand and take us all back to what it was in the 1950s. It's going to be a long, long, hard trail. And we'd better understand that. I have every confidence Trump wants to make America great. He wants to bring back the jobs in the economy. It's not going to happen overnight, and you might as well accept that right now. It's going to be a slow process. We've been letting our manufacturing go to other countries for 30 years. It's going to take a long time to rebuild it here. Now, those other countries who took over manufacturing of American-developed products are not going to be so stupid as to allow it to come back here. They're going to hang on to it because they understand the real money, the real value to an entire national economy of any manufacturing is the jobs it produces for the ordinary citizens. And this is why I fully support Trump's declaration that he wants to turn NASA away from Earth monitoring missions, meaning propaganda to support the global warming cult, and he wants to spur missions to the outer solar system. Going back to Mars, going out to Jupiter, wants to go to Europa, wants to do all of this stuff, and I absolutely 100% agree with him. Not because I want to see flags of the United States all over the solar system. And not because I'm personally curious about what they're going to find out there, although that is a factor. But I am one of those people who is old enough to remember that the tech boom of the 70s, 80s, and 90s was all born in that civilian technology incubator called the Apollo missions to the moon. So Trump is going to set us some new challenges. We're going to go out to Europa. We're going to drill down through that ice. We're going to tool around in that subterranean ocean, see if something there is swimming around looking back at us. I think, personally, we ought to go back to Titan and see if there's anything in those methane seas. That would be truly alien extraterrestrial life, might shake us out of some of our biological chauvinism that all life in the galaxy has to be based on the same chemistry that ours is. But along the way to all of those, we will develop new materials, new processes, new technologies. And out of those new materials, processes, and technologies will come new industries creating new products, which will result in American jobs. We need that civilian technology incubator. Without the moon race, prior to the moon race, following the moon race, the only real technology incubators were those in the defense plants. And they don't let what they find out to the public until it is way too late to take economic advantage of it. So I'm fully on board with what Trump is doing there. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Lenny in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing great.
Hey, I wanted to, just a few minutes ago, you mentioned that Obama has finally come out and asked the people to respect the fact that Donald Trump is the duly elected president. And you say you're waiting for Hillary. I think that's going to be a long wait. I do agree with you there. But here's my thing. Do you think old boy George Soros is going to give up his color revolution?
That remains to be seen. It's going to be a case of whether he thinks it might actually work here in the United States. And that's going to be something that Soros is going to be looking at relative to the less than wonderful success they've had in the Ukraine, and various other color revolutions that fell flat on their face. The fact that we, the American people, are aware that Soros has been playing these games in other countries mitigates against a success here in the United States. Nobody's going to believe that this purple revolution, that these rioters represent a grassroots movement of the American people. We've got too many videos of the buses bringing them in. We've got too many people who've seen the ads in Craigslist and Backstage and all these other magazines hiring these people to go on out and create a ruckus. We know this is a manufactured event. It does not really represent the will of the people. The will of the people was represented during the election, overcoming all the massive election fraud that we know took place.
Correct. One more thing. I was listening to your podcast from last week, and there was a gentleman who called in and said, gave you the quote that just because a cat have kittens in an oven does not make them biscuits. You said that you liked the quote. The quote was from Malcolm X.
Oh, okay, great. Well, he said a lot of really great things.
Sure did. Okay, have a nice day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Kyle. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
We're going to talk about Steve Bannon and how everybody, anytime he's referenced in the mainstream media now, it's Steve Bannon, white nationalist. Which, yeah, he's white, and yeah, he probably wants to put America first, but there's a big difference between somebody who's white and a nationalist between white supremacists. So I think they're
trying to blur that. They're trying to blur that. When did being white become a crime? I mean, there was apparently a big stink where one of the talking heads in the corporate media was responding to the violence of the anti-Trump protesters, and they were beating up people, and they were going, "Oh, poor white people, aren't they suffering now?" And, yeah, you don't cure racism by being racist. You don't correct all of the racial ills in this country by simply changing which race is now the targeted, designated target for abuse and aggression.
No, not at all. And this phrase, white nationalist, is the same exact thing they did with global warming, to climate change, to, this, in 6 months being white and for America, you might as well just have white hoods on, running down the
That's
street.
The way they're trying to take it. I mean, for all their talk about, we're sorry about how we misrepresented during the election, they're clearly still out there playing the same games. That anybody who wants to put America first is somehow being racist. They're still out there insisting, Obama, in his press conference this morning, he wants Trump to continue this policy of letting the illegals come into this country. Let's not, upset the ambitions of the dreamers. Well, the dreamers should have never been here, Obama. If they're disappointed, it's your fault. You gave them a lot of unrealistic expectations.
How can you have a president who's openly telling people to violate the law of the land? I mean, you have to me, that astounds me. You have laws, even if they're not enforced, you have laws on how you come to this country legally. And you're the president saying, violate these laws. Openly go against it. Meanwhile, trying to tell Trump that he should keep all these terrible ideas when he ran, his entire campaign was based on doing the opposite of that. I hope that Trump passes that executive order that nullifies all of President Obama's executive orders. I say this to people all the time. If you give the president as much power as you gave Obama, you have to understand that one day, someone you don't agree with, someone like Trump, is going to have the reins of that power, and it's your own fault.
Well, I think Trump is probably going to be less abusive of executive orders than Obama. Obama, I think, set the all-time record for executive orders of any president in U.S. history. I think Trump, as part of his agenda to make America great again, he's very obviously fully on board with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and I think he's going to try and run the office of the presidency within the restrictions on that office imposed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Whether or not he has to use executive orders is mostly going to be determined by whether Congress is willing to work with him or not. But I think the fact that Obama came on out and said it's time to reconcile yourself to a Trump presidency, I think they're beginning to realize that all of this rioting is not creating a sympathetic public image for Hillary's people and the supporters, and certainly not for all these illegal immigrants. Most of these rioters are these frustrated illegal immigrants who came up here, voted for Hillary Clinton in the expectation that they'd get amnesty and citizenship, and now they're not going to get it. So they're out there waving the flag of Mexico and screaming that Trump is not their president, and they're absolutely right. Enrique Pena Nieto is their president. Try going 1,500 miles back south and protest against your president, because you're right. Trump is not your president. The president of Mexico is your president. Go and scream about him.
Well, and the reason why it's called the executive branch is because the president is only supposed to execute the laws passed by Congress.
You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct.
He's not supposed to produce legislation like Obamacare. And legislation is not supposed to originate within the presidency. He controls the army, and he made sure that what Congress passes that's enforced.
Okay, now a couple of corrections. The president can champion and introduce legislation and support it in Congress, but Congress has to pass it. Obamacare did pass Congress with a lot of arm twisting. But you can't write laws from your desk with an executive order, which Obama did, and Bill Clinton certainly did a lot of it. They used to joke about it. Stroke of the pen, law of the land, pretty cool. And as a final technical point, in point of fact, the president is not Commander-in-Chief of all the U.S. Armed Forces until there is a declaration of war by the Congress.
It's quite similar to what Caesar. It's when, in Rome, during times of peace, it was run by the Senate. And then once there was, enemies at the gate and a war to be had, they appointed one man to go out there and fight the battle. And it was not seen as a privilege, it was seen as your duty to go out there and defend your country and then relinquish power. We're just not letting these guys relinquish
Yeah, but
power.
then it backfired when they made Marcus Licinius Crassus first consul of Rome. That was the door that opened the age of the emperors. Okay, Kyle, going to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with another caller after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Janet in Broward, Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Or Broward County.
Yeah, exactly. Broward County, Florida, where all the voter fraud went on.
Okay.
Among other places. Number one, I've been in and out your program today, so you can stop me if I'm repeating something. Number one, Emmanuel, the mayor of Chicago, has announced that is a sanctuary city, and he intends to ignore Trump saying that he will not, give money to it or he will shut it down, that it is a safe city for all these people, number one. Number two, of course, you know that Soros has held a meeting in Washington, D.C. with all these so-called Democrats, and Pelosi is one of them. Boy, I urge people, contact her. She is just ridiculous. The thing I want to say is that George Soros, he's backing Black Lives Matter. He's backing other groups. He's given at least $33 million to Black Lives Matter alone.
He's fomenting a revolution against the democratically elected government of the United States.
Why can't we drain him of his finances? One police officer's father is going after him for $550 million. Why don't other police officer families go after him for money as well? Why don't other places where there is public destruction by these buffoons in the street, why don't we drain him of his finances? He needs to pay. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for any destruction that he brings about. It's about all I have to say for now. Thank you, Michael, for all you do.
Well, thank you very much. I want to step backward to what you were talking about, Mayor Rahm Emanuel. And we're hearing the same thing from de Blasio saying, we're going to ignore Donald Trump. We're going to keep our cities as sanctuary cities. Well, there's a little bit of a problem, and it's called the national border. Because if Trump closes down that national border, then there's not going to be anybody heading to those sanctuary cities. And the federal government is not going to be sending any money into these sanctuary cities to support all these refugees and illegal migrants. So what's Rahm Emanuel going to do? Turn around to those Chicago taxpayers and say, you have to come up with that cash? Chicago's economy is already in the Al-Qaeda. This is more like the celebrities saying they're going to leave the country if Trump wins. It gives them a chance to spout on off and push their agenda, but it's not actually going to happen. If the federal agencies go into these cities and start arresting and deporting the illegal immigrants, what's Rahm Emanuel going to do? Stand there at the city limits with a shotgun? They'll roll right through him because of that supremacy clause.
I want to see that. I have 2 adult sons. They can barely work sometimes. I have always been there to absolutely even buy food for them. I am sick and tired of what's allowed to go on in this country. My kids were born here. I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. I am sick and tired of what is allowed. There's no low unemployment rate. You could take it at 23%, but if you go 101 million American people out of work, that takes it to 31%. We're not in any situation, any position to take in people from other countries.
We're certainly not in a position to take in people from other countries who have not been vetted to make sure they'll be a benefit to our society, have needed skills, no prior criminal record, no contagious diseases. They're just letting anybody walk on in, and we're seeing the same negative effects here in the United States that we're seeing all over Europe. And this is all part of Soros' New World Order globalist thing, and you're right, somebody needs to pull that guy down a notch.
And by the way, France coming out of the EU is called the Frexit. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yes, I have.
That's what it's called, and I love it. The Frexit.
All
Anyhow,
right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We're coming up on a commercial break. We got 2 more callers waiting after we get back from the commercial break here. But it is a very intense situation where we're literally seeing the establishment, which lost the election, is still trying to find some way to steal the nation back. They're going to trigger a civil war, and I don't think they're going to like how it comes on out. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're just seeing on the news, apparently, now that Obama has finished begging Donald Trump not to change anything, he's on his way to Europe to assuage Europe that Donald Trump is not going to be the end of the European Union, and so forth and so on. I don't think it's a promise anybody is going to take seriously coming from Obama. And then, of course, after he's done with that, he's coming out here for his final Christmas here on the island, which means we only have one more of those traffic nightmares and Secret Service poking around our lives to have to deal with before that's all over. Okay, let's grab some phone calls. Andy in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Mike. How you doing, my friend? I know it's a rough week, but it's also a proud week.
Yes.
Hey, well, first of all, I want to give some sentiment to your last caller. She spoke for a lot of people in this country, and she did a fine job of speaking that.
She
and
did.
I have children too that are also living at home and can't find jobs and whatnot. And we're letting a ton of people in, but the reason I called is my biggest fear is that, okay, we got the Electoral College is not certified till the 19th of December. So I'm really worried about Donald Trump making it to that particular date. And Roger Stone actually brought this up. I believe it was Roger Stone. I heard him earlier today. That's the big thing is that he makes it to the 19th, because if he's killed before then, that's going to just put the Electoral College all over the place and whatnot. And I'm quite a bit concerned about that. But
I am
also,
too. I actually had a graphic up on my website with that very idea the day after Hillary's sort of kind of dressed in purple concession speech. It's a very real possibility. If Donald Trump were to be assassinated before the Electoral College meets on the December 19th to actually have their vote, they would be left with the choice of Hillary Clinton and Mike Pence, and they would feel perfectly justified in going with Hillary Clinton. We already have 2 of the Democratic electors are already out there trying to convince the rest of the Electoral College, you can't vote for Donald Trump. Look at how much money we spent to make Hillary our empress, and that all that money will be wasted if you don't go along with us and vote for Hillary Clinton. So yeah, they're really making a try for the Electoral College. The problem is that once the corporate media finally catches up with the real world, they're going to see that Donald Trump has 302 electoral votes to Hillary's, I think it's 232. And in point of fact, Donald Trump actually did win the popular vote as well. And the corporate media and Hillary's people are trying to deny that and say, oh, no, these other numbers from 2 weeks ago, these are the valid numbers. And again, anytime somebody says Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by almost 700,000, ooh, wow, what a huge margin in a nation of 300 million Americans here, you just have to say, well, you've got to subtract out the 3 million illegal immigrants who voted for Hillary because their votes aren't supposed to count, and you have to subtract out the estimated 1.2 million dead voters, and then you have to subtract out all those computer systems that gave the votes to Hillary when people thought they were voting for Donald Trump. And then you'll get a real measure of the popular vote. And again, we don't run our elections as popular votes. Donald Trump wasn't trying to win the popular vote. He was trying to win electors, and that's what he succeeded in doing. He won by the rules everybody agreed to play with, and now the Democrats and liberals and crybabies in general are trying to change the rules after the fact. If this had been a popular vote election, Trump would have organized his campaign differently, and he still would have won.
Well, absolutely, but that knucklehead that's running the campaign for Hillary, this is what really gave me the kind of inclination that something was wrong here, because even after she conceded and whatnot, he said, this isn't over.
Yeah, Podesta.
And that kind of led me, Podesta, yeah, that led me to believe something was up. But here's another note for you. I was listening to Joyce Riley on the Power Hour this morning, and she had this, and she's had him on before. It's the Anyway, it's you go to the website LibyanWarTheTruth.com, and these guys got some serious information about what happened in Libya. It might be a good people to get on. It's Moriarty or something. Moriarty, I think it is.
Okay, I'll take a look for that. And we do need to put more emphasis back there because, with Trump's announcing that U.S. support to all these terrorist groups in Syria is over, this whole war is going to be gone. Russia and Trump and Assad working together, they're going to clean the place out and calm things down and pull us back from the possibility of a nuclear war with Russia.
Well, these guys actually was doing business in Libya, and they were taken captive by ISIS and whatnot, and somehow broke free from it. They were sentenced to death and whatnot, and they've got the inside scoop as to the $1.8 billion that's allegedly been sent to Qatar. $200 million of it was to buy weapons to arm the people in Libya. $100 million was to be given to the Qatar people for doing for actually laundering their money from their little Clinton Foundation and stuff. So, I mean, these guys really have a treasure trove of information. They're targeted right now. They're living in a little cabin up in the woods.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling.
And so, I mean, these people really have a treasure trove of information. So if you could get them on, it's the Moriarty. I got it right this time. Moriarty family, and it's Libyan war, or Libyan, the truth about the war, or something to that effect.
All right, I'll hunt it down. I'll hunt it down.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Well, I appreciate you, man.
All right, Andy, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We got a bunch of callers. We're starting to run out of time. Mike in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. One thing I don't understand is that lady that called about Soros. I have friends in Europe that told me that Soros was actually financing the snipers on Maidan in 2011 in Kiev, shooting both sides.
Yes.
Ulma Payet brought it up to Ashton, but Ashton, she was Secretary of EU then, didn't want to hear it. And this guy is a criminal, and he lives in the United States. Why aren't we arresting him?
We should be. It's a mystery why we aren't. I mean, this guy, George Soros, reminds me of the villain, and this is a really old movie. It was called $1 Billion Brain. It was a Michael Caine movie. It was a follow-on to the Ipcris file, and it focused on this billionaire who just decided Russia was evil and he was going to start World War III all by himself, and Ed Begley played the billionaire, and Soros is of the same thing. Soros genuinely believes that having the kind of money he has gives him a right to play with the earth and its people like his own personal toys. And I do resent that. He's not elected to be in any kind of a governing position, but he's out there. I mean, he's a super villain that you would see in a James Bond movie, and he should be arrested. And by the way, if you look at the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com, apparently there is a protest planned in front of his house for this coming Sunday. They've actually got the address of where George Soros has his home, and there's going to be a peaceful demonstration around his home, and I hope about 2 million people show on up, give him a little taste of his own medicine there.
Well, he lives in New York, but the other thing is, I think Soros is doing these things for money. He hopes to destabilize government so he can speculate. That's how he made. That's how he made his fortune.
That's a big part of how he continues to make his money. But Soros wants a single global government. He's been backing the New World Order global government because once it's under one government and Soros owns that government, then he can basically plunder the human population at will.
Well, that's true. But the other thing too is China today has warned Trump that if you start fooling with the taxes and slapping, taxes on the imports, we're going to retaliate. So I think Trump is going to have to be very careful what he's doing because he may affect. Basically, the Chinese talked about the Apple and the Boeing orders and that they would cancel the Boeing planes and they would play with the Apple factories and that kind of thing. I read that on
I think that's a hollow threat because right now Apple sales are in decline. The iWatch has turned out to be a complete unmitigated disaster, second only to the Lisa. And so I don't know. I mean, the president of China called Trump and said cooperation is really a better way to go. So I think they will. But it's perfectly legitimate for Trump to bring the manufacturing of these things back to the United States. I mean, China did not design and engineer the iPhone. That was all done here in California, and we could manufacture it just as easily here as is done in China. It's a complicated issue. There's no easy answer. But if we don't bring technology and jobs back to this country, then we're doomed because the rest of the world doesn't want to borrow Federal Reserve notes for cross-border trade and banking, and without that, our economy is going to collapse unless we can. Go ahead.
I agree, but the problem is, in the short term, there's no production left in the United States.
I agree.
The LA area, in the short term, even the first 4 years in his presidency, it'll be very tough for him to do anything. I agree that he should bring back the production back, but it's not going to be an easy task. That's all I'm saying. So people should be aware of that.
Well, it's going to take a little while, but, changes in tax policy. I mean, one of the reasons so many of our jobs went to other countries is during the administration of George W. Bush, they literally modified the tax code to actually incentivize American corporations to offshore jobs. And I don't know what they were thinking. Well, yeah, I do know what they were thinking. They wanted to bring the American standard of living down to the same level as every other nation as part of that whole New World Order global government story. But Trump can bring the manufacturing back very easily by changing that tax code to where companies that are manufacturing overseas have to pay high tariffs to bring the products back here into the United States of America, and companies that are manufacturing here in America get favorable treatment. That's all it's really going to take. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of capitalization to rebuild our manufacturing base. And then, of course, there's that other issue about the GMO disaster. Nobody wants to buy American agriculture. These TPP and TTIP were an attempt to arm twist other countries into buying our GMO agriculture to feed to their own people, hide from their people that that's what they were eating, and both of those trade agreements are now pretty much dead.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll see what happens, but it'll be not the easy road ahead, let me put it that way.
No, it's going to be very, very difficult, and anybody who's expecting immediate gratification from a Trump presidency, you're living in a dream world. It's going to be a long fight back to America being a great nation again. But we can do it. We can do it.
Well, I know we can, but the problem is also that Trump will have to be very careful what he's doing in the next 100, 200, 300 days. Because you promise a lot of things, and, I don't think the Republicans will go along. I remember reading stuff about him when he went to Detroit, and he told the workers that if Ford moves the plant to Mexico, he'll charge 35% on the Fords coming back from Mexico. But I don't know if Ryan or McCullough will go along, Mitch McCollum will go along with it, because his donors will be upset at them. You know what I mean? So it'll be a tough thing. I mean,
well,
I don't know.
There's a factor there, but there's something else to keep in mind, and that is this idea that up until this election, politicians thought donors and money controlled everything, Now they're realizing that if sufficiently angered, the American people can vote them out of office, and it doesn't matter how much money they've got. That is the real political lesson of the 2016 election, and every politician is going to be including that in their thinking for the next 2 years. And so, yes, we want to make our donors happy, but we can't make the voters mad because they'll be able to overcome all the bot elections that are out there.
I agree with you, and like I said, Trump won because you realize that the American people, the average citizen, the middle class, is pissed. And he spoke with them and said, I feel your pain, and that's why people didn't like Hillary, because she kept saying, oh, Obama did great. Obama, look what he's doing. Is 4.9% unemployment. That's BS. The number is not 4.9%. It's like that lady said, it's more like 33% or something. So,
okay,
anyway,
well, yeah. All right, thanks an awful lot, Mike. We're going to let you go. No, people voted against Hillary Clinton because of this long history of corruption. Now, Hillary's campaign and the corporate media basically ran this entire year on this assumption that nobody remembered all the corruption for the last 25 years. And this is where the Internet and the independent media have really profoundly changed the way information flows through society, because now we have a collective memory for our civilization that is not under the control of the wealthy and the political elites. We decide for ourselves what is historical. And that's why people remembered not just Benghazi, but Travelgate, cattle futures, all of that stuff, the sheer accumulation. That's what did Hillary in. I'm still hearing from liberals, oh, you just couldn't stand a woman president. So I didn't have a problem with a woman president. You destroyed yourself by choosing as your flagship somebody with that history of crime and corruption. And this arrogant fantasy by the liberals that with enough money and enough advertising on TV that the American people could be made to forget all about Vince Foster, the travel office firings, Chinagate, Whitewater, Castle Grande, Flowerwood, on and on and on and on. That's where they failed. They really did not understand they are not in control of what Americans think any longer. All right, let's grab some more phone calls because we're running out of time. Jesse in Ohio, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I had an idea for all the safe space users.
Yes.
I think we need to have them doing abstract paintings of their feelings or explaining it to us with interpretive dance.
Well, we have to give them fingerprints. We have to give them fingerprints, but we can't trust them with any sharp objects because they're all suicidal now.
Well, that'll still work. I mean, or watercolors.
I don't know. They could poke their eyes out with those brushes. I think finger paints are definitely the way to go. All right.
Well, should we really be trusted with safety pins?
You don't need safety pins to do finger painting. Shouldn't trust them with anything.
Have you not seen that
Certainly
trend?
not with our country.
Well, no, but have you not seen that trend where they're all now wearing safety pins to say that you can talk to them about these problems that their fears of Trump?
Oh, boy.
I'm actually in the store right now buying a pack of safety pins because I live in a very liberal college town, and I'm going out to shoot some pool. I'm going to wear a safety pin to see if I can real life troll anybody.
I'm still wearing my Hillary for Prison button over here. All right, listen, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercial. We got a couple more phone calls. I'm going to take up the rest of our program. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Quick note to the World Meteorological Organization over there at the United Nations. Sweden just broke their all-time snow record. Asia is something like 50 degrees below the normal temperatures. Take that, you global warming fools. All right, let's see. Ron in the Bronx. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Aloha. Quick question. I know you're stretched for time. They said Bolton, the Wall Street Journal just reported Bolton or Giuliani is being considered for Secretary of State. Just want to know your thoughts. Thanks.
Well, being considered and being finally chosen are two different things, and I know a lot of people are trying to plant stories in the media to try and bring it about in the hope that somebody in Trump's transition team is going to be saying, oh, Giuliani is Secretary of State. No, we ought to look at that, and then they'll consider it. Until his cabinet is finalized, we don't really know. Giuliani, I don't think, is going to be as pro-military as Hillary certainly was. I'd like to see somebody in there who's a bit more of a diplomat than Giuliani. But again, Trump's got the job, and it really is ultimately up to him. So thank you for the phone call, Ron, and we're going to finish up with Apostle in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How are you, Mike? Mike, I have to give credit to KD Troxel on this one. But Trump said that with these protests going on, I'm already creating jobs, and I'm not even president.
I got that from so many people today about how, yes, he's not even president, and look at all the jobs he's created. I have to wonder, at what point does Soros start running out of money from all of this stuff that he's doing?
Great to be a billionaire, huh? Huh, Mike?
I'd like to find out. I'd even settle for just being an ordinary millionaire, but, as opposed to being a tenaire, which is what I am right now.
Mike, all the best. Love you. Love your show. Doing a great job.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the kind words and the phone call here. As you're probably already aware, looking at all the shopping malls, the Christmas decorations are already up, and there may be a bit of a problem. The Hanjin bankruptcy has disrupted the U.S. supply chain. In the lead up to the holiday shopping season, the stores can't even get a lot of what they want to get that they're hoping you are going to buy this holiday shopping season. They're already talking about, Black Friday and Cyber Monday or Cyber Tuesday or all the rest of this other nonsense. It's not going to happen. Claire and I were down at our local mall in one of the anchor tenants, and I'm not going to say who it is, except to note that they are one of the department store chains that are in serious trouble. Everything we looked at was just shoddy and shabby in terms of its materials and the quality of the workmanship. It looked like stuff you'd get out of a Cracker Jack box. And it's pretty bad out there. There's the music. I got to go to Jim Goddard's show up in Vancouver. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical. Share what you know with everybody that you know. Yes, I know those liberals are still living in their little fairy tale bubbles. You need to be out there and just give it a little bit of a pop and help them come back to the real world. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.